Today, we'll be talking about Kyle Busch and whether or not he will stay at RCR in 2026 or leave RCR in 2026. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We are expecting that Kyle Busch is going to return to Richard Childress Racing in 2025. Earlier this year, there was a lot of talks and conversations that he potentially could talk to a team like Joe Gibbs Racing, go over there, and could also go back to Hendrick Motorsports in the future. But Kyle Busch also really doesn't have a talking clause currently at the moment with Richard Childress Racing. And after it was announced that Corey LaJoie would not be returning to Spire Motorsports for 2025, there's been a lot of talk and speculation that Kyle Busch could leave RCR at the end of this year and could go over and drive for a team like Spire Motorsports in 2025. The problem is Bob Pockers has reported recently that he does expect that Kyle Busch is going to return to RCR in 2025. Now, why is there a lot of talk about this? Well, Kyle Busch has been really struggling, not just all of this year, but near the end of last year. The first half of 2023 for Kyle Busch was very, very competitive, and he had a really good chance and opportunity early in the year to win the championship, as Kyle Busch was able to go out and win 3 of the first, 14 or 15 races of the season. However, since that point, while they were consistent, the team really started declining a bit. And so far in 2024, Kyle Busch, I think, has only had 2 top 5s this year and 6 top 10 finishes. And in the last 8 races, Kyle Busch has had 5 DNFs and has crashed a lot more. Now, why has he been crashing a lot more? Well, number one is because of performance. He's trying to overachieve in that equipment the best as he can. And RCR right now, their performance as an organization just is not there at the moment. They're off their game. They're not showing the consistency and the pace and speed. I don't think Kyle Busch really is the problem at Richard Childress Racing. Neither is Randall Burnett. Randall Burnett's won a lot of races in the Cup Series. He won 3 races with Tyler Reddick and 3 races with Kyle Busch. He's won 6 races in the last 3 or 4 years. So Randall Burnett is not the problem either at Richard Childress Racing. I think it's a cultural issue that Richard Childress Racing has at the moment. Their team is just way behind the 8 ball, and we know they're planning to make some executive changes to try to fix the problem. But I think another major reason why RCR is really struggling at this moment right now is Chevrolet altogether. Outside of Hendrick Motorsports, which they are the best team currently in NASCAR at the moment, and they've been the best team for like 40 years at this point, they are the only Chevy team that's really performing. Trackhouse Racing, they're struggling in a sense. Roche SA may not make the playoffs here, as Bubba Wallace is close to passing him in the standings right now. And Daniel Suarez, while he does have to win Atlanta, he's not been running as fast. Spire Motorsports has been struggling in Cisdo. Carson Ospar has been a standout at times this year. And same, of course, with Zane Smith the last month or so, while Corey LaJoie has been struggling. Kaulig Racing is one of the slowest teams in the NASCAR Cup Series currently at the moment. Shane Van Gisbergen has driven for that car, been really the only guy that's been competitive in that seat at times this year. And in general, like I said, outside of them, and they lost Legacy to go to Toyota as well. So I think it's all around a Chevrolet problem. But let's say Kyle Busch makes a decision to leave RCR because of the frustration. Because like I said, I do think more than likely you are going to see Kyle Busch return to RCR in 2025. But let's say things change and that doesn't happen. What team could Kyle Busch go to in 2026 if he does in fact decide to leave RCR at the end of this year? We're going to discuss that today. The first team that Kyle Busch could potentially go to in 2026 is Joe Gibbs Racing. Now, Kyle Busch drove for Joe Gibbs Racing from 2008 up until the end of 2022, when it was announced in late 2021 that M&M's would not be returning to Joe Gibbs Racing at the end of 2022, and they were really struggling to find sponsorship and funding for Kyle Busch. While Joe Gibbs was willing to outpay Kyle and really paying him to stay around with the team, Kyle Busch really wanted to find his own path, and he didn't want to have to go another year into contract negotiations. Now, Kyle Busch could potentially go, remember he doesn't have a contract talk he can do, but let's say that he does. I think JGR would be a really good option to go back, because I think they're going to need veteran presence over there. While Chris Bell and Chase Briscoe have been in the Cup Series long enough at this point, I think having Kyle Busch over there back at Toyota and Joe Gibbs Racing would absolutely make a ton of sense, right? I think they would be super competitive for sure, and I do think Kyle Busch would have a solid chance and opportunity to compete for a championship, because he was still really good at JGR even in the last year or so. We all forget before Gateway or after Gateway, he was still in the top 5 in the standings. He just had a complete collapse near the end of the season. I think Joe Gibbs Racing would be a really good option to go if there's that possibility. If Denny Hamlin decides to leave the organization, he could take over the 11 or they could bring the 18 back. That could certainly be a possibility for sure. I think this may be one of the least likely options for sure, but I think Joe Gibbs Racing has to be looked at as a potential possibility and a candidacy team that could look at Kyle Busch for the 2026 season. The second team that Kyle Busch could end up going to in 2026 is Spire Motorsports. Spire Motorsports I already talked about a little bit earlier, but there's been rumors, speculation that Kyle Busch could go to Spire Motorsports in 2025, but I don't know if that's going to happen at this point. But I do think that there is going to be a Spire car that's going to be available in 2026, and that is going to be that number 7 car. And the reason I mentioned Spire Motorsports and why I think this probably is the most likely organization that Kyle Busch could go with is because Kyle Busch does have a working relationship with Spire Motorsports. Remember, at the end of last year, Spire Motorsports purchased Kyle Busch Motorsports Truck Series team and also purchased the KBM shop. The KBM shop is what Spire Motorsports is using for their Cup Series program at this particular moment. And I think, and remember, Kyle Busch is also a consultant to their Truck Series program currently at the moment. And I think Rodney Childers is going to want to have a veteran presence over there. We know that Spire Motorsports is spending a lot of money on drivers. They just picked up Michael McDowell for this year. They got Gamebridge sponsorship. There's rumors that Andretti could be coming in to work with this team. There's other drivers that have driven for them recently. Connor Zilic early in the year. He's going to run some more races with Spire at the end of this year. There's also been rumors they're going to try to still work with Trackhouse, and they've got the Truck Series program with Roger Griffin and technically Nick Sanchez as well. I think Spire Motorsports would be an excellent option for Kyle Busch to go with. And I think this, like I said, is the most likely option for Kyle Busch going into 2026 because I think Spire Motorsports is looking to build up. Their program is growing, and while a team like RCR, they're currently floundering at this particular moment, a team like Spire Motorsports is continuing to grow, and I think this would be a really great chance and possibility for Kyle Busch to really rejuvenate his career. I know he's been struggling, like I said, in the next-gen era, but I do think the Spire Motorsports would be a fantastic, great option to go with if this became an opportunity as a possibility. The third team that Kyle Busch could potentially go to in 2026 is 2311 Racing. There's been rumors of this being a possibility over the last year or so, or last couple of years, going all the way back to 2022 during the contract negotiations. It actually came down to 2311 Racing and RCR for whether Kyle Busch could go here. Now, why could Kyle Busch go to 2311? Well, there's a big key reason. Kurt Busch is still working over at 2311 Racing as one of the higher-ups at the team and working as a consultant to try to help Bubba Wallace and Tyler Reddick, and they could be a potential possibility for a third car. We are expecting that Riley Herbst is one of the lead candidates that could be over there. There's also potentially going to be a fourth car next year with Martin Truex Jr. running part-time. Same with Corey Heim, maybe Kurt and Carl if they wanted to come back from retirement. But still, I do think that this could be a really good option for Kyle Busch. They are competing for a championship right now, and I think having another veteran over at that team would make a lot of sense currently at the moment as a possibility. Now, Denny Hamlin would be the one to have to make that decision, but Denny and Kyle have worked together very well, and we know Bubba got actually pushed by Kyle Busch at the end of the race at the Brickyard 400, so maybe that could be another option as well as a potential possibility. I don't know how likely this would be, but I do think 2311 could be a potential option for Kyle Busch in the near future if they decided to make this move. And the final maybe outside possibility is Hendrick Motorsports. Now, I think Hendrick Motorsports is not the most likely organization that would pick up Kyle Busch, and here's why. Hendrick Motorsports, they have all their drivers under contract through 2025, and Alex Bowman set through 26. Many people talk about maybe Alex Bowman getting replaced, but Alex Bowman just recently won a freaking race not that long ago at Chicago, and he's been super consistent. I think he has a really good chance and opportunity to win the Cup Series title still this season. So I don't think he's really going to be a full-scale option for the 48. We know William Byron is expected also to sign an extension. Now, maybe they buy out the contract from Bowman, but I don't see that happening. I don't think Hendrick would be a fantastic option. I think having a veteran like Kyle Busch over there would definitely help their program for sure, and I certainly do think of how good Hendrick Motorsports is. I do think Kyle Busch would definitely be a championship threat and contender, but I don't know if that would be the case. So we'll see what ends up happening over there if that's a possibility, but I don't know if Hendrick Motorsports will be a great possibility to potentially happen. So those are the potential teams that Kyle Busch could go with if he did decide, in fact, leave RCR. So will he leave RCR at the end of 2025? I actually think yes. I do think Kyle Busch is going to be looking for greener pastures at the end of next year. Again, I've already mentioned that they are looking at some other options for sure, but I just don't see Kyle Busch staying at RCR to get that program better. They are declining at a rapid rate. Performance isn't there, and if they don't get better, I do think Kyle Busch leaves RCR. I just think next year could be his last year with the team. I think the honeymoon phase is really weared off, and I know Kyle's wanting to stick with Richard to make that program better, and they're trying to make the program better, but it just seems like Richard's got other interests that he's kind of working at the moment, and I think that will lead Kyle Busch to leaving Richard Childress Racing at the end of next season. I think 2025 will be the final year. I think there's a really good chance he sticks around with RCR for sure through next year, but I do think 2025 for sure will be the final year that you do see Kyle Busch drive a Richard Childress Racing car in 2025. So, that is going to be today's special video on Kyle Busch. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, and if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support my Patreon as well. List description below that, and comment your thoughts below on today's episode. Do you think Kyle Busch returns to Richard Childress Racing in 2026, or do you think he leaves RCR at the end of next year? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Tomorrow on the channel, we're likely going to have something like schedule predictions potentially for 2025. We may have video on Hailie Deegan potentially as well this weekend on Saturday. And then on Sunday, of course, we'll probably have the 2026 silly season predictions and some other great content dropping this weekend. And Monday, we're going to have a NASCAR news video talking about Hailie Deegan, talk more about the Corey LaJoie stuff, and some other silly season news we're going to get to talk about as well. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.